What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. What a great start to the week. An exciting game and a pretty good game for fantasy as well. Alvin Kamara just caught another pass. We're going to talk about that to start the show. And then we only have 5 games to talk about today. 5 NFC home games. And they are Dolphins, Eagles, Cardinals, Seahawks, Falcons, Bucs, Niners, Vikings on Monday night. And Washington is at the Giants. Good morning. Dave Richard is here. Jamie Eisenberg here, and your host today is a bad friend. Bad friend. I wouldn't say I forgot about Jamie's birthday. I would say I didn't know about Jamie's birthday, but I am sorry, Jamie. Happy belated birthday. I will try to make it up to you somehow.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that.
Okay. Good game last night? I know. I feel bad. I even got trash talked on HQ. Just like nothing but bad things. Schneier's going to kill me today on the mailbag, but don't worry. We have like 5 things that we're going to kill Schneier for in the mailbag today, including his upcoming Halloween costume. Good game, right? I can say it was a good game last night.
It was a good ending. The first half was awful. God, awful. The ending was good. I had a buddy text me. He's like, hey, at least you're getting a good game for your birthday. I'm like, am I? it was a good finish though. I feel terrible for Adam Troutman. So terrible. Not Adam Troutman. So bad for him. I mean, that guy, if anybody deserved a moment like he could have had, coming back from a cancer diagnosis and being a New Orleans guy, an LSU guy, that was like, it was just set up for such a beautiful situation. I feel awful for him.
Yeah, I think we all did. That was really tough. Drop the potentially game tie. Well, they were going to make it a 1-point game, then they could decide what they were going to do. Probably tie the game. Touchdown on 3rd and goal, and then on 4th and goal, and just a play that had no chance to throw to Chris Olave. But Trevor Lawrence actually was good. 20 fantasy points, 20.1 fantasy points. Dave, start with the Jaguars. What were your takeaways? They were really good, except for that Calvin Ridley guy who had 1 catch for 5 yards.
And I watched the snaps from Ridley from last night's game, and the Saints did everything they could to try and take him away. Safety over the top on obvious passing downs. And Trevor Lawrence was getting rid of the ball really quickly. So a lot of the routes that Ridley was running weren't conducive to what Lawrence was trying to get done. I don't think his pass protection was particularly good. I thought that Ridley looked fine, and there were a handful of plays where he was wide open and Lawrence just went in a different direction. But honestly, there were more plays where he was like covered, and then there was a safety near him, and the Saints just did a good job of taking him away and forcing Lawrence to go in a different direction with the football. That's it. It wasn't Lattimore shadowing him. Paulson Adebo did a great job covering Ridley. So that was frustrating, but Christian Kirk more than made up for it. Loved what I saw in that 44-yard catch and run touchdown. That was amazing. Evan Ingram still hasn't scored, still just a PPR only tight end that you can feel good about. And ETN, nothing more you can say about him. Must start guy. And how about Lawrence? Bad knee, brace on his knee, runs for 59 yards. And that's what helped him get to 20 fantasy points. That was pretty surprising.
Yeah, and what I said about Ridley, I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with this. I said on FFT and 5 last night is I think my default now for Ridley is to sit him. Whereas, I start the week, Ridley's going to start for me, and if there's a reason to sit him, I'll sit him. At this point, if there's a reason to start him, I'll start him. But we've seen if he faces good cornerbacks, he's going to lose. The Chiefs, the Falcons, now the Saints. Am I forgetting one? He's going to lose those matchups. So
and look who's coming up for him. It's Pittsburgh.
They can't cover anyone.
So that's a good matchup. Then the bye and then the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, they're not interesting.
They're going to be tougher for him and tougher for Lawrence. Tennessee, that's going to be easy. At Houston, we've seen the Texans do a pretty good job against wide receivers.
That's not easy.
Cincinnati, tough.
Easy.
Cleveland, real tough. Baltimore, tough. Tampa Bay,
easy.
Is he a sell for whatever you can get?
Jamie, what do you think?
It's not a bad move, but I mean, I think it's...
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jamie.
You shouldn't have wished me happy birthday earlier. This would have been a funnier setup.
I set it up, right? Did I make up for it yet?
No.
Right. Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, you could sell him, but again, I don't know what people are buying him at this point because you kind of see what you're getting.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's a shame. Maybe matchup dependent. We'll see. On the
And
other
what a
side,
great call by Heath preseason.
he
Sure.
got away from it. He switched at the end, didn't he?
He might have.
He kind of
I think
resigned
so.
to it. Yeah. But
Derek Carr almost had about 25 fantasy points, 26 fantasy points. Derek Carr, actually, I was reading this morning, he set a record in this game for profanity. He was a potty mouth, and he was very angry, and he was yelling the entire time. I was actually watching the post-game show was pretty good, and they're thinking, apparently he was screaming at, clearly at his offensive coordinator. I think Tony Gonzalez was saying, like, he could kind of deny it last week, but he's angry on the sideline, wondering if they're going to be
Well, he
playing.
was yelling at Olave for stopping on the one route.
yeah, yep.
That was.
Kamara and this guy and that guy. He was in a bad mood yesterday.
He owned it too after the game. He said, "I got to
did.
keep my emotions in check."
And how about his ADOT? The first 3 quarters, it was, what did I tell you it was, Adam? 4.3 yards?
Yeah, something like that.
Really scared of that offensive line. His offensive line was a mess.
Yeah.
They had a bunch of backups in, and it was not great. But they held up well enough, certainly in the fourth quarter. His ADOT in the fourth quarter, 9 yards. He finally started to attack, and lo and behold, his numbers popped. Saints offense looked good. It was a little frustrating that it took him that long to realize that he could throw downfield against the Jaguars.
I think also I saw one of the Saints beat writers tweet this or exit, whatever you call it, that they got to stop with the end zone fades. It's unbelievable. Like it's like their go-to play every time they're in a tough spot. It happened last week too in the loss against Houston. It's like they just throw these fade routes all the time, and it's not working at all.
Yeah, I don't think that. That play hasn't worked since like the 90s. I feel, but okay, Kamara with 12 catches. And
if you were to say, by the way, he had 12 for 91, you would say, "Wow, what a great rushing day for him."
I know.
That's true.
The Jaguars run defense
31 touches. Is that what he had? 29 touches?
29 touches.
29 touches. 31
29 PPR points.
Targets he did.
I'm going to ask you what Chris asked me yesterday. Alvin Kamara is a top blank running back rest of season.
Oh, he stays healthy. Top 3 PPR.
Sure.
Wow. Okay. And he got some goal line work too, but he couldn't get in. So then Taysom Hill had to clean up the dirty work.
That's a better question. Taysom Hill is tight end blank rest of season.
What do you think? I mean, this is two games in a row where he's been used as a receiver. Still no Juwan Johnson.
I do love all the decision making people had to make when they switched him to quarterback only in other sites. Now he's a great tight end.
Yeah, I know, right?
What a mess.
Well, what do you think? Is he at least worth adding? He's about 42%, Ross. 42%.
Oh, Juwan Johnson's out. I'm starting. No hesitation at this point.
Sure, because look at what Derek Carr's doing. He's throwing 4 yards downfield, and that's where a lot of Hill's routes are.
Well, wait a second. That's not typical. Carr actually, well, I think he was he was number 4, I think, in air yards per pass.
He was, and I think he had the most pass attempts of 15+ yards downfield.
Right, so that's not typical of him. That was, like you said, both starting tackles being out. But, okay, Hill's worth adding. How about Olave? 7 catches, 57 yards on 15 targets. Good. Is this an encouraging game, Jamie, or a discouraging game for Olave?
It's discouraging, but you're not getting away from Olave. You expect 15 targets to turn to a hell of a lot more for him, especially against this defense. So he's still a borderline number 1 wide receiver as he was being drafted.
Agreed. Decent buy low opportunity coming up.
Do you guys want to talk about Trevor Lawrence? Is there anything to say here? I mean,
no, I mentioned him. The rushing is what saved him. I expected more from Trevor Lawrence this season. I wanted him to be just a dynamo at quarterback. I thought he'd get there. And really what we've seen is him struggle to put up huge numbers. And I kind of get it. They're able to run the ball a lot better than I thought that they would. But Lawrence really hasn't been able to break through as one of the top echelon quarterbacks in the league. Certainly for fantasy, but maybe not quite for the NFL either. And we just outlined the schedule. He's got some tough games coming up.
I think NFL-wise, he's playing fantastic. Fantasy-wise, he's not. Because he's had the 2 games in London, certainly the Buffalo game, he was unbelievable. And, just didn't get he's not getting the second touchdown. That's kind of just what's missing at this point. So we have a few of these guys. Derek Carr, too, his last 3 games. He's been good for fantasy, just not great because he's been missing the second touchdown. We've said about Matthew Stafford almost all season. So I think there's still a buy low opportunity here for Trevor Lawrence. I know we probably sound silly for continuing to mention this, but his best games have come when Zay Jones has been on the field because there's a field stretcher, opens things up. And so maybe that's part of it too, is that, they change some of their play calls and how things operate. Their offensive line's banged up. They have a lot of time over the next 3 weeks to get these guys healthy with one game in the next 21 days. So I would, if somebody's selling Trevor Lawrence, I'd be buying.
It doesn't help that they're 5-2. Their defense is playing well. They had a pick 6 in this game, and that Travis Etienne is the first Jaguars running back in franchise history to have 3 straight games with 2 touchdowns. So that's just kind of killing Trevor Lawrence.
It is. That's the difference.
All the fun. Yeah. All right. YouTube.com/fantasy football today, this Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, and every Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. We'll be answering your questions. We have a lot of fun. It's a live chat basically on youtube.com/fantasy football today. At 10 a.m. Eastern, you can start your day with CBS Sports HQ and watch fantasy football today there on the CBS Sports app, or just watch HQ. You can go to cbssportshq.com and you can watch it. But the CBS Sports app is the way to go. We have great weekend programming, and we have your questions on Twitter, or X, as Jamie said, at #AskFFT. Let's go through the news and notes here. Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, they both missed practice. It was their first practice of the week. I don't really have anything else to say. Are you guys optimistic about McCaffrey and Deebo?
More optimistic than I was Sunday and Monday. I mean, the fact that, they're being called day to day. All the Twitter doctors are saying, the fact that he avoided a rib injury, and it just seems like it's a muscle situation, which is clearly not great for McCaffrey, but better than what we thought. So there's a chance he could play. It sucks that it's Monday and we have to, sort of play the guessing game of what to do with the Sunday situations. I don't know. I didn't see what Mason's roster percentage got to. I should probably look, but if he's still available, just at least to have somebody of this backfield, it's not a bad move to make if he's still out there.
No, he's 80% plus.
So
okay, so then, look, maybe a lot of that is McCaffrey managers, but be prepared for them not to play at this point. Like I struggled with this, and I should have probably trusted my gut, which was I have in the FFT Open League, I have Romeo Doubs, Calvin Ridley, and Deebo, and I was like, I'm just gonna bench Ridley, and just if Deebo plays, I'll play him. If not, I'll just go with Doubs. And I was like, I'll just keep Ridley in there. Idiot.
All right. Jimmy Garoppolo is out. Deshaun Watson practiced. Still not clear if he will be the quarterback this week. How much would your Amari Cooper ranking at the Colts change if Watson plays compared to PJ Walker?
Significantly. And Cooper was pretty good last week, even with PJ Walker. He had that big catch, 8 targets, 4 grabs, over 100 yards. But that's the best matchup when you're playing the Colts, is outside receiver against those corners. So if Deshaun Watson plays, I think Cooper could probably qualify as a low-end wide receiver 1 this week.
Yeah, I still wouldn't be so all in like that, just because it's clear Watson is dealing with some level of pain and discomfort in his shoulder. And so how much success will he have? And I didn't think Cooper played particularly well last week. He had one big play.
Who's better, PJ Walker or Deshaun Watson at?
Oh, what? No, Cooper definitely improves, but not to the level where you have him, for me at least. I think he's still just barely a top 20 receiver.
I don't know, man. There's so many receivers missing this week. I kind of get excited about anybody that's got a glimmer of 20 PPR points, and I think he's got that, even with Watson not at 100.
I hope so. Yeah.
So I mentioned Garoppolo out, but I didn't mention that we don't know if it's going to be Aiden O'Connell or Brian Hoyer at quarterback for the Raiders. So
It'd
stay
be
tuned.
Surprising if it's O'Connell, right?
I'll see if I can get an answer for that.
I thought Hoyer was pretty good, actually, and O'Connell was certainly not. So,
well, especially after what McDaniel said following the loss with O'Connell and just throwing him under the bus.
Oh, I don't remember. What did he say?
Our quarterback has to do a better job of protecting the football. Like, I mean, you put him in such a bad spot.
For a rookie? Come on, man.
Yeah.
For his guy making his first start? Come on.
Right.
Justin Fields not going to play. Daniel Jones is practicing, but still not cleared for contact, so we're expecting Tyrod Taylor there. Rashawn Johnson missed practice again. He's still in the concussion protocol. Zach Charbonnet missed practice, which is not a huge deal, but it's maybe more snaps, maybe a couple more catches. Who knows for Ken Walker. Devontae Smith says he's going to play. Don't worry about him. He's going to play. TJ Watt missed practice with a heel injury. Pat Freiermuth was limited after practicing in full on Wednesday. Hunter Henry missed practice again. Aaron Jones was still limited. Looks like he's going to play. Philadelphia got some very good news. Start with Lane Johnson limited in practice. That'd be something if he could play. I thought he'd be out.
That dude's a beast.
Yeah. Their safety Reed Blankenship and cornerback Bradley Roby both missed practice, but defensive tackle Jalen Carter was limited. Cornerback Darius Slay and safety Sidney Brown, they practiced in full. So I think a pretty encouraging practice report for the Eagles. And on the other side of the ball, Xavier Howard, Miami's top cornerback, he is questionable. He may not play in that Sunday night game. Greg Dulcich missed practice for the Broncos, and Terrace Marshall has been given permission to seek a trade. All right. Good luck, Terrace Marshall. We'll take a break. When we come back, we got one question for each game, starting with that big one on Sunday night, Miami at Philadelphia. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. One question for each game. Only 5 games on the slate today. Miami at Philadelphia. Question here is, start everyone?
Yes.
Is there anyone you're getting nervous about? Goddard.
No, I mean, look, Smith obviously has been frustrating. So, the hope is that no Howard, squeaky wheel at some point coming up here. I haven't really heard anything about that, but he's due. So, but no, given as Dave alluded to, with all the receivers on a bye, all the teams on a bye, injuries, it's very difficult to get away from him.
Jeff Wilson. That's who I'm nervous about.
Are we expecting him to play?
I think you have to at this point, right?
Because I think about it. Brooks got hurt.
Right.
And so Wilson can take that spot, but I don't think he'll do well, and I don't think he'll play much.
All right. It's been long enough. I should probably play the music, right? Philadelphia.
Yeah, go ahead.
Day to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Jamie Eisenberg. Happy birthday to you. All right. Arizona is at Seattle. Rank the wide receivers in this game. The Seahawks give up the most fantasy points to wide receivers. Rank the wide receivers, Dave Richard, in Arizona at Seattle.
Let's go with Metcalf first. Lockett. No, I think I might have Marquise Brown ahead of Lockett. I'll double check that, but they're going to be neck and neck. And then I've got this gut feeling that JSN shows up this week.
Yeah, he is season high in like everything last week in terms of participation.
Yeah, and here comes the defense that plays a lot of zone coverage, so that underneath should be open. He can get open there. That's where he's supposed to. That's where he's supposed to make an impact for Seattle. And just another gut feeling. I think the Seahawks want to get their passing game going. Geno's been bad. This is a good matchup for them to let Geno try and put up some numbers.
As you said, Metcalf, Brown, Lockett, or Metcalf, Lockett, Brown.
I've got Metcalf, Brown, Lockett.
Okay. Atlanta's at Tampa Bay. Jamie, rank the wide receivers.
Mike Evans, Drake London, Chris Godwin.
Okay. You have faith
Jefferson, Matt Collins.
you have faith in those guys? Because Evans has like one game with more than 65 yards. Godwin's 2 good games in a row. London is 2 big games in a row. Do you have faith in these guys? Are they good starts?
Evans is a must start. London is a good number 2 receiver, and Godwin's a borderline number 2, number 3 receiver.
Yeah, I think PPR matters for Godwin. I'm not as excited in non-PPR.
All right, San Francisco at Minnesota. Does anybody like the Minnesota passing game in this matchup?
Yeah, there's Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson.
Hawkinson. Like we don't need to make any decisions.
Or is this a Kirk Cousins question?
It's a Cousins Addison. I mean, look, it wasn't exactly a great game for Addison. He had 4 targets. He had a touchdown.
It wasn't a great game for the Vikings passing game last week because they didn't do a lot of it. So, and I think it's going to be difficult for them, but I think they're going to need to throw against the 49ers. I think the Niners offense bounces back, and I think Cousins will be okay. I think he'll kind of the same range as what we got from Lawrence and Derek Carr on Thursday.
It's just a shame. You look at this matchup on paper, and at the beginning of the season, this is going to be a nice, high-scoring game. But if there's no Debo, if there's no McCaffrey, if Cousins plays the way he played last week, which it wasn't bad, but their longest completion was 21 yards. He just didn't really have a lot of help. I mean, this has Costanza potential here. This has bust potential, I think. Do you agree with that, Jamie? Niners, Vikings?
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, you're taking away 2 studs from San Francisco, most likely, and you're asking Brock Purdy to have success without those guys on the field. He still can, when you have Kittle and Ayuk, and they'll get something out of their run game. But I'm nervous about Minnesota. Clearly, Madison is a number 2 running back by default this week because of all the guys who are missing. But I don't think he's gonna have a great game. And then you look at Cousins, and it feels like it's not going to be great without Jefferson, especially taking on a tough defense.
I've got Purdy one spot higher than Cousins.
Yeah, I would start Purdy over Cousins.
Is that crazy? No. Okay. All right.
Is that Matt?
Both top 12, by the way.
But do Debo and McCaffrey matter in that?
Oh, I mean, if they come back, then Purdy's going to be better than Goff. I'd probably say he's better than Sam Howell. So he'd move up if we knew that those guys were going to play.
All right, Washington.
I think this is a Kittle game. I think they go to George Kittle in a big way.
I'm not going to play game of the week for Giants Washington, but I do feel like we're going to get a good game here. A Washington win, but a good game. Start or sit, Terry McLaurin. I have some terrific Terry McLaurin stats. If you don't already have them, but start or sit Terry McLaurin in this game.
5 straight games with 13 or more PPR points against the Giants. He's got 3 touchdowns over that span, 300-yard games over that span. I think 4 games with 6 or more catches over that span. It's probably extended longer than that. I just did the last 5.
It is. It's every game of his career. 7 games against the Giants, 70 or more yards in all of those games, and averaging 19 PPR fantasy points against the Giants in his career.
And guess who has the second highest target per route run rate when Sam Howell is pressured?
Antonio Gibson.
He's tied with Brian Robinson. McLaurin has twice as good of a target share when he's pressured, and I think he's going to get pressured a lot. 24% target per route run rate for McLaurin when Howell is pressured. He is a low-end wide receiver 2 for me this week.
Yeah, he's a high-end wide receiver 2 for me. I think it's going to be a huge game for him, and his best games this season have been on the road. All 3 of his good games this year have come on the road.
Not sure I agree with you on the pressure thing, though, necessarily. I know the Giants are going to blitz a lot, but they're 16th in pressure rate. I guess they could be. I thought they were worse.
I mean, I don't think the Commanders' offensive line is a fortress that's going to make it easy for Howell to drop back and find guys.
All right. Part of it is Howell holds the ball forever.
He does that. And he doesn't have great timing with his receivers. He doesn't throw with anticipation. Like, he's got to see his wide receiver open before he fires. And then he doesn't keep his eyes downfield when he runs around when he is pressured. So I honestly, you got lucky with him last week. Given the way that the game went, the fact that he had 3 possessions start at midfield or better, I think you got lucky, but I still think he's got potential to get you maybe slightly better than 20 fantasy points because it's the Giants.
Well, I started him over Trevor Lawrence, who got 20 fantasy points.
I like it.
Let's hope Howell gets there. All right, we got a lot of belated birthday wishes in the chat. So Jamie, you are welcome.
Thank you.
Even though they're all spelling your name wrong, Jamey. Let's get that right. Let's beat the waiver wire for next week. I have a bunch of names here, but there's one name. It's a DST that's on a bye, and it's the Jets, and they're at the Giants next week, which is a pretty long trip for them, but they should be okay. But you could, if you want to stash a DST, Jets at Giants looks pretty good to me. They're 66% rostered.
Might be a 1-week DST, though. I mean, they're playing great, so maybe not. But after the Giants, it's the Chargers, the Raiders, the Bills, the Dolphins. So not a lot of awesome matchups where you'll feel great starting the Jets.
I wouldn't have a problem starting against the Chargers, depending on what happens this week, and then definitely against the Raiders.
That's true.
Yeah.
Raiders is a good matchup.
Chargers are they could be a little turnover prone sometimes. They'll probably turn it over on downs a couple times. We know that. There are some DSTs you could look for, so I won't even mention them. There's plenty. Kyler Murray, obviously, is someone that you want to be stashing right now. I still think Deontay Foreman at 66% roster. It's pretty interesting.
He's a starter this week.
I know. It's weird. And
that's not to beat the waiver wire. That's to pick him up and play him this week.
Well, what if Johnson comes back? Which
at this point, not clearing the protocol doesn't seem likely heading into Friday.
Oh, he's not going to play. I'd be shocked if Roshan played this week. He hasn't practiced this week.
Right.
And so are you asking about next week?
Well, yes, sure. Yes.
My hunch is that they'll split work, and then there won't be one guy that you'll feel really good about. You'll lean toward Roshan, but he'd be at best a low-end running back. Remember, next week, no buys. Everybody's in. That's cool. So a lot of running backs that are pushed up this week will get pushed back down next week.
Sure, but still no Khalil Herbert. So that could, if Foreman stinks, they'll throw Roshan in there.
Jahan Dotson is, if you want to take a shot, 56% rostered, but you might want to take a shot on JSN, 53% rostered.
You might start taking shots if you get Jahan Dotson and then start him because he's been so bad.
You took a shot every time Jahan Dotson had a catch last week. You would have been perfectly fine. He had a bad drop. He had one target. Brandon Cooks and Michael Gallup. If you're going to pick up one, you guys are going to say Cooks, aren't you?
I would say Cooks, but there's no reason to get either one unless it's for a bye week replacement down the road.
Well, I think Gallup is actually, he dropped a touchdown and was missed on a touchdown last week, and he had 10 targets. He's actually getting a pretty decent amount of targets, or at least target share. I would be saying pick him up. He hasn't really done anything with.
I wonder though if Cooks maybe turned the corner. He had a little bit of a knee injury that he was dealing with, missed a game. And now finally healthy, coming off. I don't want to say great game, but productive game for him. And I still think there's more upside with him than there is with Gallup.
Yes, and I wonder if the Cowboys think the exact same thing, and that leads to more work for Cooks.
Josh Downs is 45% rostered, guys. Thoughts, Josh Downs?
PPR, he should be on on any roster.
Yeah, man, pick him up.
Bench
Elijah Moore I have on here just because if you look at the games with Deshaun Watson, it's a lot of targets for Elijah Moore. So, I don't know. And then what do you think about McCole Hardman, 14% rostered?
Deeper leagues, not a bad option. Look, we don't know what's going to happen there with him even this week. I don't know if he's going to play or not, but he's certainly somebody that doesn't have to learn anything. He knows the system. He knows the coach. He knows the quarterback. And they have a need, especially if Justin Watson is going to be out or on IR. So, yeah.
I think he's going to work special teams for sure. They've already talked about that. It's a matter of time before you start seeing him on the field when the Chiefs have first and goal. And that's where he succeeded last year. So you almost view him in the same vein as like a short yardage goal line running back who might get you 6 points in a week. He might get you only 2, but he gets work down there. He was successful there last year. I'm almost positive he'll be there again this year.
And by the way, I should mention no teams are on bye next week, so you don't have to.
Good job. Good job. Thank you for mentioning that.
Did you mention that?
No.
Sorry,
I do it all the time.
It just carries more weight if it comes from me, so I just figured I should mention that no teams.
You want to know who the Raiders quarterback is going to be this week?
Yes.
Go ask Josh McDaniels because he's not telling anybody yet.
And I didn't know if you had any other beat the waiver wire guys. I think Jonnu Smith, if you're struggling at tight end, is under rostered at 31%.
Agreed.
He's just involved, and they're actually throwing the ball kind of a lot, which is nice.
Definitely check if anybody dropped Dalton Schultz. He was at 70% rostered, so he might be in our threshold that we typically talk about. He's been great the last few weeks. CJ Stroud might have been dropped because people making roster moves. I would go back to
Carolina after the bye.
Tank Dell may have been dropped because of his injury situation. He's been very good. So keep an eye on those type of things. We look more at some of the 12-team leagues, but in 10-team leagues or shallow, you may see some people dropping players that are pretty relevant.
Yeah, you've got this big group of receivers. Will be the end of this segment. You got this big group of receivers who might be available in shallower leagues or maybe a 12-team league. One of them might be there. They're all right around 75% rostered in CBS Sports leagues. They are Josh Reynolds, Rashee Rice, Tank Dell, Josh Palmer, and KJ Osborne. Is Tank Dell the best of that bunch? Reynolds,
him or Rice. I think again, if you don't need to play anybody, I would probably speculate on Rice. And another guy, he's definitely in this range is Wan'Dale Robinson. He's not rostered anywhere close to this, and coming off 8 for 62, it's not bad to see if he could build off it.
I'd also take a look at Josh Palmer if he's there, just because we know that his role is locked in with the Chargers. Hasn't been exciting. 10 PPR points, I think, in each of his first 2 games since Mike Williams went down, but he's not leaving the field, and he's still going to get some targets. So I wouldn't sleep on him either, but the other receivers are more fun. Tank and then Rice.
Let's go to the games. Miami is at Philadelphia. Stat of the game. According to common.com, which is a good enough source for me for this one, Philadelphia was host to America's first birthday. I didn't forget about that one, Jamie.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Got any music for that?
Yeah. Happy birthday, Jamie. All right, stat of the game is stupid there, so let's just talk about
I can't wait till you get sued for copyright violations.
No, apparently I'm fine playing all of these. It was approved. So anyway, no more music for a little while. Sorry about that. Okay.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, no, definitely not gonna happen. Gosh, I have nothing planned for game of the week. I just don't even know like what to do. I'm about to pick a different game. Who would you start? Give me the quarterbacks you'd start over Tua.
Josh Allen. That's it.
Jalen Hurts.
Okay. Mostert, you guys are super confident. Jamie and Heath have Mostert as RB1. Dave has him as RB5. No concerns against this Eagles run defense?
I've got concerns. That's why he's RB5.
I've got concerns as well, but you're still talking about what like he's I don't want to say he's as safe as you could find, because probably Kamara you could have said is safer just knowing the way he's been playing, but my goodness, man, like there's zero competition right now. Even if Jeff Wilson plays, I don't think he's going to take him off the field for significant stretches. And they're so creative and they're so successful. Like even a bad game for him, I think is still going to be top 10 range. So the floor just feels very safe. Now he could completely fall flat on his face if the Eagles run defense shows up, but I still feel like this Dolphins offense is just not going to be stopped. They may be slowed. I don't think they'll be stopped. And even look, the 48-20 loss, A-Chain's numbers were still great.
Yeah. Okay. And who do you think is going to win, by the way?
Eagles.
Yep.
So when you look at Waddle and Smith, and Waddle's been, he's caught a touchdown in 2 straight games, but obviously he hasn't been himself. And Smith is struggling right now. Are there other wide receivers? It's not going to be guys like Pittman, but I don't know. Are them Puka Nacua? In your mind, players that, managers could have picked up off waivers or drafted really late that you would consider starting over Waddle or Smith this week?
Nakua qualifies. Addison versus Devontae Smith is a tough call. And in full PPR, I would go Pittman over Devontae Smith.
Oh,
I'd go Zay Flowers over Smith. I would go with
what about
Juwan
Jacoby
Jennings
Myers?
if there's no Debo Samuel. No, I'm kidding.
Jacoby Myers is a good one.
Oh, Myers, yeah.
I like Myers if Garoppolo plays. If there's no Garoppolo, then
Well, Garoppolo's already been ruled out.
Yeah.
So.
He's out, and there are no teams on bye next week.
Okay.
These are well-established things on today's show.
Was it my birthday yesterday?
It was. There might be more music. I don't know. Okay, but Jalen Waddle, like not even considering sitting him.
Jalen Waddle? No, he's top 10 receiver this week.
Okay.
That's way too high. I have him 12.
DeAndre Swift is top 10. This game's easy. I don't want to waste time on it. Dallas Goedert. Would you start Sam Laporta over Dallas Goedert?
Yep.
Would I start Sam Laporta over Dallas Goedert? Yeah, but they're close.
Anyone else? Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts
over Goedert?
Pitts, yes. Jonnu, no. Look, if the Dolphins are going to put up points, then I think you're going to see the receivers be a lot more involved than they were before, and that's going to hurt Goddard, who's been used a little bit further downfield lately, but I'm not sure if he's going to.
Yeah. The Eagles and the Dolphins. Start your Eagles and your Dolphins, people.
Except for Jeff Wilson.
Not Jeff Wilson. Yeah, this wasn't.
I kind of set you up on that one. Like I knew in my head that you needed an out to play the music because you didn't have anything planned.
Oh, thank you, Dave.
So I went on Goddard. Goddard's top 10, but you're almost starting him because you're hoping he scores and catches 5 passes.
Yeah, I would just of the guys Dave mentioned, I'd still start him over Pitts.
Yeah, this show is going to be a musical. It's like this is a Broadway episode of fantasy football today. DSTs, Eagles DST. Any interest?
Low end starter at best, but if you can get away from him, get away from him.
All right.
Would you cut them to start like the Raiders DST or the Packers DST?
The only ones I would consider this week, just based on the ones who are available. Browns were available. That's an easy one. Just based on their matchup.
Yeah.
If you're stuck and you need a win this week, I would have gone with the Commanders or the Seahawks, just based on their matchups. But otherwise, I would just kind of ride it out with the Eagles.
Right. Like it's kind of a pain in the butt if you cut the Eagles and somebody else gets them. It's a really good DST. I'd hate to let them go just for this one game. They have the Commanders next week. Then Dallas.
They haven't been that good this year though, because they've been really shredded in the air. But they are starting to get their pass rush back.
Yeah,
14 sacks in the last 3 games.
I'm still a believer in them.
All right. That's it for the Eagles and the Dolphins, and super excited for that one. Arizona's at Seattle.
A little less excited for this one.
Stat of the game, Josh Dobbs is 0 for 10 on throws of 30 or more air yards, which, by the way, is kind of a lot of throws. He likes to throw the ball deep, but he is really bad at it. And if you saw it last week, he missed Marquise Brown on 2 deep balls that could have been huge plays. So that's hurting Marquise Brown. At the same time, Seattle allows the most fantasy points to wide receivers, as I mentioned earlier. So we'll see how that one plays out here. Is there basically one starter for the Cardinals, Jamie, when you look at them? Is it just
without a doubt, yes. You can't trust the running backs. You can't trust Dobbs. You can't trust Ertz, because it seems as if Trey McBride is starting to become a thing. And so at this point, yeah, it's Marquise Brown or bust. Maybe if you want to take a shot in deeper leagues with the 6 teams on a bye on Michael Wilson and hope, chasing points, how the secondary has looked, that's not a bad desperation play. Certainly in DFS, he's a great option. But I think at this point, though, the only one you could trust is Marquise Brown. I mean, he's getting 10 targets per game on a weekly basis. They're going to be chasing points here. So it's a good setup for Marquise Brown.
Marquise Brown or Devontae Smith?
Brown.
I have Smith over Brown.
Marquise Brown or Ayuk?
Oh,
Ayuk's like almost top 5.
Yeah.
Marquise Brown or well, I already asked you guys. Well, Dave ranked Metcalf, Brown, Lockett. So let me get you a running back. Marquise Brown or Alexander Madison?
Brown.
Okay. I want to call a shot here. Devontae Smith, 100 yards and at least 1 touchdown.
I like it.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand
don't hate it. I think,
hesitant.
I'm ranking him based a little bit more on the fact that he hasn't been amazing. Like if I really thought he was going to get 100 yards and a touchdown, he'd be top 10, obviously.
And look, if Howard's out without Ramsey back yet, then that will change my opinion of Smith too.
Yeah, that kind of was a part of it. But I just think it's just going to be up and down. So excited for that game.
Can I mention one other thing about that game?
10 targets, 3 straight games. Yeah.
Vic Fangio worked with the Eagles defense last year. He was a consultant for them. And now he's on the Dolphins. He's the Dolphins defensive coordinator.
Right.
So I can't help but think that he'll have some intel. I know he said this week that he probably hurt the Dolphins more than helped, but I think he was being modest. We've seen it time and time again. When a former defensive coach plays their former team the year after, they do really well.
All right, so we like
that's good for the Dolphins, by the way. I know we're talking about the Eagles receivers, but that's good for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I'll get back to the Cardinals game. Keontae Ingram is actually rostered in fewer leagues than Amari DiMercato right now. He had 10 carries. Damian Williams had 8 carries. The Seahawks run defense, in terms of yards per carry allowed to running backs, the Seahawks are the best in the NFL. They allow 2.68 yards per carry to running backs. They face the Rams. They face Montgomery and Gibbs. They face Miles Sanders. They face Matt Breida. They face Joe Mixon, whatever. You're going to sit the Cardinals running backs. But if it's 6 teams on a bye and you're desperate here and you had to start one, would it be Ingram or DiMercato or Williams?
It's Ingram, and you're expecting 5 fantasy points.
Yeah, I had a bad bye week situation in the Dynasty League, and so I'm starting Damian Williams, but it's just because we have to start 3 running backs, and I just need some semblance of a couple points.
If you're in a deep league and you want to stash a tight end, Trey McBride is 6% roster, and then hopefully
please trade Zach Ertz. Get him to a contender. Let's see if he can compete before his time is up in the NFL. And at this point, what are you doing? Play the younger guys.
They did last week. I mean, Ertz played his lowest snap share of the season, 46%. All right, we talked about Purdy and Cousins a little bit earlier today. Do you have them ahead or behind Geno Smith?
Ahead.
Right now I have Purdy. Who'd you say it was? Geno, Purdy, and who's the other one?
Purdy, Cousins.
Kirk Cousins.
Oh, Geno over Cousins and Purdy over Geno.
I've got Purdy, Kirk, Geno. 11, 12, 13 in the ranks.
The Cardinals give up the 5th most points to quarterbacks. Geno Smith, I talked about him not throwing the deep ball last week. Season high, 8.5 intended air yards per pass attempt. That's a good sign. It's just like Trevor Lawrence, man. It's Ken Walker stealing all the fun with all those goal line touchdowns. So hopefully a little bit different luck. And I'd like for him to throw touchdowns to Ken Walker, and everybody wins.
Yeah.
Except for Metcalf and Lockett. Start Ken Walker. and Metcalf and Lockett. Yeah, they're
I think
number
the
two.
one thing, Dave mentioned this earlier about JSN. I wonder how much of his production came last week when Metcalf left due to injury.
I tried to solve that. I tried to figure that out. So when Metcalf was on the field, Metcalf ran 39 routes. Lockett ran 31 and JSN ran 30. So Dave, if you want to, that's good for JSN. If you want to look this up, I think, and I read this somewhere, that with Charles Cross back, they were able to run 3 receiver sets more often.
Right, because they didn't have to use a blocker more.
Yes, I think that was actually a big development for them. They've been in 2 tight end sets a lot this year. Very rarely in 3 receiver sets. That might have been something that changed last week. So I actually thought the same thing, Jamie. I actually don't think that was the case. I think JSN just legitimately got more playing time. So probably helped a little bit by the Metcalf brief absence. But I think the Seahawks might be trending more to a 3 receiver look type of team if they can stay healthy at offensive tackle. So look, you can't start JSN, but you can stash him for sure. And the Seattle tight ends were going to sit. And the Seattle DST, would you start them over the Eagles?
Yes.
For sure.
All right. Atlanta's at Tampa Bay. Stat of the game. We can look at the Falcons tight ends versus the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have been pretty good against tight ends. Technically, they're 13th, which doesn't really jump off the page. But TJ Hawkinson, 35 yards. Cole Kmet, 38. Dallas Goedert, 41. Sam Laporta, 36 yards on 11 targets. None of those guys caught a touchdown. So the Bucs have been good against tight ends. But Jonnu Smith, I mean, Kit Pitts has 2 good games in a row. Jonnu Smith, in his last 5 games, he's the number 8 tight end. Number 7 in PPR, number 8.5 PPR. He has the 9th most targets amongst tight ends. He has the 5th most catches. Jonnu Smith, in his last 5 games, has the 4th most yards among tight ends. So these guys are super involved. Jamie, are they both starters this week? Pitts and Jonnu?
Pitts for sure. And then, Jonnu's on the cusp of a starting tight end, but his production has certainly suggested that you should be starting him. It just depends on how much do you want to buy into the Luke Musgraves and the Michael Mayers of the world on top of going back to Pat Freiermuth. So given the matchup, you can make cases for those other guys. But I think if you've just been starting Jonnu Smith, you stick with Jonnu Smith and hope it's another 10 to 11 PPR point day. And that's kind of been the nice thing for Desmond Ridder. He's been supporting multiple guys, which is not something that we would have thought at the beginning of the season.
He's consistently been a short area target, and both Smith and Pitts have done well against zone coverage. That's what the Bucs play a lot of. I expect them to keep doing that. It's why I'm encouraged with Pitts. I've got Pitts top 5 this week in PPR, and Jonnu's 10th. I like them both.
All right, let's just hope Desmond Ridder can get it together on the road. Yeah, 58.
Well, even if he can, he's still throwing it 35 times.
He is throwing a lot. He averages 5.5 yards per attempt on the road in his career to 7.3 yards per attempt at home in his career.
That's good for Jonnu. That's not as good for Pitts.
We're going to start Bijan Robinson, obviously. You look, Tyler Algier, he gets 15 or so carries in any competitive game. So if you are stuck at running back, it might be something, it's not a heavy endorsement here, but you want some carry. Like, I think I would start him over Keontae Ingram.
I was about to say, who's the better start between those two?
Yeah. So I think most of this game should be spent on the wide receivers here.
You can make a case that Algier's better than Rashad White.
All right. And you know what? Before we go to the wide receivers,
I'd rather start White, but Algier's at least ahead of Keontae Ingram.
Let's go to Rashad White here, because the Falcons give up the 3rd fewest points to running backs, 3rd fewest receiving yards per game to running backs. White usually gets 3-ish catches per game. But how do you feel about him, Jamie? Rashad White?
Sit him. I mean, there's no reason to start him at this point, and that's saying something with 6 teams on a bye and the injuries. He's just not producing. And you're seeing Keyshawn Vaughn get more work than we thought. Sean Tucker may creep up and pop up again. It's their run game sucks. And the fact that he's not more involved in the pass game sucks. That was for me was what I was hoping for, was that even if he couldn't get going on the ground based on their personnel and their backfield, there wasn't a pass catcher that was going to take him off the field. And that's still the case. But Baker's just not checking the ball down to the same level. And that was kind of his MO. He did it in Cleveland. He certainly did it in Carolina. and he's just not doing it to the same level in Tampa Bay that I was expecting. So I would try and get away from Rashad White. Like you said, the matchup's tough. His production's been terrible. And so even though he's still the leader of this backfield, that doesn't mean he's a start for fantasy.
At what point does the coaching staff move on, or at least lower his workload significantly?
I mean, clearly, if they went from Tucker, who was the second guy prior to the bye week, to Keyshawn Vaughn, they're trying a lot of different things here. So I would not rule out, if they are still in the race by the time the trade deadline gets here, that they're calling some teams to try and get a running back cheap.
I will say that I want to say something for Rashad White here. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a running back who's had a tougher schedule than Rashad White. Even the Bears, if you look, it depends what metric you want to use, because the Bears do give up the most fantasy points to running, or up there. But not the most points. They give up a ton of points. 29th. And he killed them. But in terms of yards per carry allowed to running backs, every team he has faced so far, Rashad White, is top 11 in that metric, including the Lions, who are second best, the Eagles, who are third best, the Saints, who are sixth best, the Bears, who are seventh best, and then the Falcons are the easiest matchup, in quotes, 12th best. There's not a single team that at this point in the season is giving up more than 3.8 yards per carry to running backs. So Rashad White has had a rough stretch in that regard, and he's run the ball very poorly. I don't know if it's the matchups or if it's him, but it's done him no favors.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong in that regard. But again, there's not a lot of, okay, he's doing this well, at least in these tough matchups, or he's saving himself with his work in the passing game because of these tough matchups. That just hasn't been there, which is, again, the frustrating part of this. Like, I thought when they had some injuries at the receiving core, okay, now we see a little bit more from Rashad White. And to Baker's credit, look, he's been throwing the ball down the field. But that was, to me, his sort of, safety net was, okay, if he can't run the ball like we saw last year, at least the work in the passing game will be there. And it just hasn't been.
Upcoming matchups for him include Tennessee, San Francisco.
You can't skip the next two.
No, you can't skip the next two, which are Buffalo and Houston.
Yeah, I mean, they're easier.
I mean, technically, the Buffalo matchup is a favorable matchup, and it's on a short week. Statistically, it's a favorable matchup. Yeah. I don't know how many people are going to feel good about starting Rashad White anyway.
No, I know. It's tough. He's just had a tough schedule.
All right. Matchups coming up for him still.
Would you guys start
Tampa Bay right now? You said if they're still in the race, they're currently in first place in the NFC South. Even if they lose, they'll be well, Atlanta would be in first place. This is a game for first place.
Let me give you
some landing spot for Derrick Henry.
Maybe. Let me give you some sort of low-end options at wide receiver. Would you start any of these guys over Rashad White?
Yes.
Josh Downs?
Yes.
Yes.
In half PPR?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Wan'Dale Robinson?
Yes.
No, come on.
Yeah, I like Robinson
harder in half PPR and no way in non-PPR, but in full PPR, absolutely.
Curtis Samuel?
100%.
That's another yes, even in half PPR.
Rashee Rice or Rashad?
1,000,000,000%.
Rice, I think I'd say, yeah, even in half PPR, Rice over White.
Brandon Powell.
Brandon
Powell. No. I was just joking about that one. Okay.
That's too far.
At running back, would you start Rashad White or Jonathan Taylor?
Taylor.
Rashad White or Jaylen Warren?
Well, I like Warren better than Taylor, so Warren.
Warren in PPR. I'll start the grab bag that is Zach Evans over Rashad White.
All right.
Yeah, I for me, like the guys that we've talked about, I would start White over the Cardinals guys.
Now you have my permission to talk about the wide receivers in this game.
Say it the right way, at least.
Now you have my permission, dude. Yeah, I don't know, to talk about the receivers. Or I can do the Batman. Now you have my permission to die. Anyway,
where's the trigger?
Where's the trigger? That's such a horrible line.
That whole sequence is horrible. Like the way they kill Bane is so horrible.
And he's like, "No, I came back to stop you." It's one of the weakest comebacks. I think that's what he says. He's like,
it's such a good movie in that whole sequence.
Die. It's like, "No, I came back to stop you." It's like, really? You're this genius, and you can't think of a better line than that? Awful. Okay, sorry. The wide receivers in this game. Jamie, first word.
We did this already.
Not really. No, I want to know these are tough calls. We get a lot of Godwin questions. We get a lot of London questions every week.
Evans is a must-start receiver based on how he's performed this year when he's not playing the Saints. Then I would go London. You take away week 1, which I'll just throw that out in general. 4 of his last 5 games, he's been fantastic. And so London is a must-start receiver in PPR, borderline and non. And he crushed this team in week 18 last year with Desmond Ridder. Again, no Pitts in that game, but the stretch we saw in those 4 games last year, he's basically back 9 targets per game, which is elite level status for a wide receiver. And then Godwin's third. But I think the thing about Godwin, the way that he's been producing the last 2 weeks, one of those was when Evans got hurt, is you buy into it that Baker's starting to lean on him a little bit. So he's a high-end number 3 receiver, but borderline number 2 guy if you're just looking at the rankings. I have this decision to make myself, and I am starting Godwin over Pittman.
Yeah, we have a question, Godwin or Pittman. If you have any questions about this game, love to hear them. Fire away in the chat. Rashad White or Latavius Murray?
White in PPR, Murray in non-and-half.
Yep.
Adam thinks Robert Pattinson is the best Batman. I don't think that. It's definitely Christian Bale, but the Batman with Robert Pattinson was really a very good movie. Super dark. Don't watch it with your kids. It's not a comic book movie. It's a murder mystery, but a very, very good movie. All right, I'm not seeing any questions here, so I think we can move on. Oh, Zay Flowers or Mike Evans?
Evans.
Evans, but it's close.
So then would you start Zay Flowers over London and Godwin?
Yes, without question.
I would start London, and I currently have Godwin over Flowers in PPR.
All right, listen, I give this stat every week. I'll give it one more time, and then we'll go to our next game. It is now the last 10 games for the Bucs going back to last year. The Bucs have allowed 98 yards or a touchdown to 18 wide receivers in their last 10 games. And they've done that to multiple. They've allowed that to multiple wide receivers in every game of this year, except for the game where Derek Carr should not have played because he could not throw the football. Last week, it was Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's every freaking week. It's 2 receivers having 98 yards or a touchdown or both. Okay, that's it for that game. We're going to take a break here. We got 2 games left when we come back. San Francisco at Minnesota, Washington at the Giants, and we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. The Vikings host the 49ers on Monday night. Stat of the game. Kirk Cousins threw to his running backs a season high 25.8% of the time last week. 25.8% of his throws went to running backs. Alexander Mattison had 7 targets. Can't sit here and guarantee that's going to happen again, but, obviously, no Jefferson, different offense here. So how much do you like Alexander Mattison this week, guys? Dave?
I like him by default because there aren't a lot of running backs that have a chance to get 10, not higher than 10, 12 to 15 touches. I hate the matchup, but he's fallen in as a low-end RB2, and you're hoping that the targets stick around and that he gets a bunch of catches, but it's not going to be a pretty game.
Okay. Would you start Alexander Mattison or Chris Godwin?
Oh, Godwin.
Okay. Alexander Mattison or Josh Downs?
The fact that I have to look, I've got
Who's the
Downs
question?
ranked
Sorry?
higher.
Madison or Josh Downs?
Madison.
Even in full PPR.
Yeah. I don't think this is going to be a good game for the Colts passing game.
Okay. Excuse me. Pattinson Batman movie rivals Clooney for worst Batman movie from SS. Are you? No, come on. Did you guys see the Pattinson Batman movie? The Batman?
Yeah, it was good. It wasn't great, but it was good.
It was
Yeah,
very
it was
good.
better than the Clooney and the Val Kilmer.
Oh, all
Definitely
those,
better than that one.
those movies were terrible.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, they were. Brock Purdy and Kirk Cousins are, right around 12th. Starting Howell over them, right?
Yep.
Starting not Mayfield.
If you think that Kirk Cousins is going to have a bad game, you should start Geno over him for sure. I think Cousins can still come through and be pretty good. And I'm a little worried about Geno having the big blow-up game. My only inclination is a gut feeling, not based on anything else that Geno's actually done. So I've got Cousins ahead of Geno, but I wouldn't blame you if you rolled the dice.
I would take Geno, and there is something to hang your hat on there. It's the matchup so much better in Geno's favor.
Yeah.
That's facts.
Um,
I think Cousins will throw way more than 31 times.
He definitely
Purdy,
will, but I wonder, as Adam alluded to, like the 49ers feel like they're going to slow this game down because of the potential injuries. And that defense has got to be pissed after what happened last week, where they gave up, 2 field goal drives that allowed them to lose the game. It is back-to-back road in San Francisco, but they do have the extra day to get better. I think Greenlaw, if he plays, will be a big part of this as well. They missed him in their run defense.
Mm-hmm.
So having their guys healthy against that Vikings offense, which is down their best player, and we saw, again, for whatever it's worth, you want to say 31 pass attempts, you want to say that Cousins didn't need to do very much. I get all that, but it's still a game without Justin Jefferson against that defense. I think Cousins is going to be in trouble.
got a question here in the chat. Purdy or Goff?
I'm going to stick with Goff this week. I just like what I saw last week. For the first time, he had his receiving core healthy, and no David Montgomery probably puts a little bit more onus on him to have to carry the offense, and certainly losing the goal line hammer that they have there without Montgomery playing. So maybe we get some passing touchdowns inside the 5. So
Yep.
I like the setup for Goff a little bit better, even if Purdy has his guys.
I do too. I love that Goff's offensive line is in good shape. That'll help him against a step up in competition.
And the Ravens, I know their defense is great, but look at the quarterbacks that they face. This is the best one,
Right.
probably in terms of health.
This is probably like the second most game that I'm looking forward to watching. Like Eagles Dolphins, no question, but this one I'm really looking forward to because it's a step up in competition for both the Lions and the Ravens.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the okay, yeah, not the Niners Vikings.
No,
So let's talk about the Niners Vikings. I think a little bit here. Okay, San Francisco running backs. If McCaffrey plays, you know what you're doing. If McCaffrey does not play, where are you ranking Elijah Mitchell, Dave? Where are you ranking Jordan Mason?
I've got Mitchell 15th because I think he'll be the lead back, and I think he'll be the one that gets high value touches. Mason is a flex.
So Mitchell over Mitchell, Madison, Mason.
Yes.
Ooh, look at the M's. And Minnesota's run defense is excellent, by the way. And they also are giving up the second fewest receiving yards per game to running backs, but we like San Francisco running backs. That's going to outweigh the matchup.
Love their scheme. It's just been proven to be good time and time again.
Elijah Mitchell or Brian Robinson?
Robinson.
Robinson,
though.
Robinson. Unless you were to say right now that it's Mitchell is going to be the guy and Mason is just going to be the strict backup, then I would take Mitchell.
Okay. How about Mitchell or Jahmyr Gibbs? Assuming Reynolds is out.
Gibbs.
Well, assuming Gibbs is in. Okay, Gibbs.
I've got Mitchell over Gibbs, but I've got it ranked Robinson, Mitchell, Gibbs.
Since Jordan Mason is probably the most added. All right. Since Jordan Mason is probably the most added player in fantasy, we should talk about him. Would you start Jalen?
Bye-week replacement running back. He's got a great rushing average this year, but I think it's either his 2 best runs or 2 of his best runs came in like 3rd and 15, and he gained 12 yards, stuff like that. So situations where they basically wave the white flag and they just run a draw play with Mason.
And he has 1 catch in his career. Would you start Jordan Mason or Jalen Warren?
I've got Warren ahead of Mason by several spots.
Would you start Jordan Mason or Justice Hill?
I've got Hill 1 spot ahead of Mason. I might flip that one.
If Jeff Wilson plays, Mason or
Mason.
Wilson? Okay.
I don't really feel good about starting Jeff Wilson. Wilson wouldn't even be a top 36 running back for me.
All right. Ayuk is an easy call. Start him. If Debo plays, start or sit.
Number 3 receiver. I think that's where he's at right now. Now, let's lay out this scenario. If Debo plays and McCaffrey does not play, then I might put Debo inside the top 24 because I think he'll get some carries.
Debo would be a must-start guy if he plays.
All right, Dave, you're just like a little hesitant coming off the injury?
A little bit hesitant coming off the injury. And what they might end up doing is mixing up all 3 backs, which is still good for Debo. But I don't know if he's like, when you say must start, I think of like top 12, top 15 type of wide receiver. I think he'd be a low-end wide receiver too if there's no McCaffrey.
Yeah, I think, again, that's the scenario. Clearly no McCaffrey, but he may be their best rusher.
Do they put him out there in that position knowing that he's not 100%?
I mean, who knows? He's played through injuries certainly plenty of times, but I think just given the situation, he probably would be up there in terms of leading them in carries.
Yeah, I think he's trustworthy. He's, like I said, top 24 type of wide receiver. Where would you rank him? Would you put him top 15, top 20?
Like 18, 19, if McCaffrey's out.
If McCaffrey's out, what if McCaffrey is in and Debo's in?
Then probably
Number
22,
three.
23.
All right. If McCaffrey and Debo both play, would you start Debo Samuel or Chris Godwin and Marquise Brown? Look at those guys.
Brown, Samuel, Godwin in the order.
I'd put Samuel behind Godwin in PPR.
All right. To the Vikings here, we talked about Cousins, low-end starter or high-end backup. We talked about Madison. Okay. At Addison, you guys are pretty high on him. Heath is not. Heath has Addison outside the top 24. Addison had 3 catches for 28 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets at the Bears last week in his first game without Jefferson. He does have 4 touchdowns on the season. But Jamie, why so high on Jordan Addison?
I think you're playing out game script. He's probably going to see a lot of targets. They're probably going to throw the ball a lot. So while Cousins may have like a 232 and 3 type of game, I think we'll see Addison have a chance to score, see the most targets of this receiving core. And I don't mind him given the circumstances of what the week looks like.
All right. So is he going to be higher than Debo Samuel in your rankings regardless?
Yes.
All right.
He's going to be, I might have him ranked a little too aggressively right now. I've got him in the top 20. I will probably move Addison down, but only like 3 or 4 spots.
So far, the 49ers haven't really stopped any good receivers except for CeeDee Lamb, who had, that was a horrible game for the Cowboys. He had 4 catches for 49 on 5 targets. But let's see. I mean, Michael Wilson and Marquise Brown had big games. Amari Cooper had a huge game. Puka Nacua had 147 yards. Tutu Atwell had 7 for 77.
Amari had a big catch.
Right.
I mean, he did, but he schooled the cornerback, and then he made another contested catch against their best cornerback, Charvarius Ward. So he had 100 yards. I know you're really killing him, Amari Cooper.
He had a great catch. It was fantastic, but it's not like it was, 4 for 108 for him. If it was 6 for 108, 7 for 108, that's more in line what I would expect from Amari Cooper.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah, but I'd still say he beat expectations last week with PJ Walker as his quarterback.
That's fair.
And TJ Hawkinson is a start. And KJ Osborne, forgot to ask about him.
Number 4 receiver.
Yep. Bye-week replacement.
Let's go to the real game of the week here. Washington's at the Giants. Stat of the game that I don't expect to matter. The Commanders have allowed 111 yards or more to a wide receiver in 5 straight games. Mims, Diggs, A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Drake London. I will, gosh, I don't even know what I would do. Name it. If the Giants receiver has 111 yards in this game, I will lose some bet. And
who would it be?
Slayton.
Good call.
Do you think the Giants wide receivers will total 111 yards?
No. I actually don't. That's a great call.
Well, they did last week with their better quarterback.
They did, yeah. The Commanders are bad against the deep ball. We talk about that like every time we talk about the Commanders.
And they've got some weapons who can attack deep. It's just a matter of whether or not Tyrod does it.
I mean, do they really, though? They don't have like a great deep ball.
Jalen Hyatt can win downfield.
Yeah, maybe.
So can Darius Slayton.
But for fantasy purposes, it doesn't really matter. But
they're
exactly,
DFS tournament plays.
It's not exactly a Wan'Dale Robinson script, I guess. But,
Nope.
He's gets his PPR floor. Stat of the game that might matter. Terry McLaurin is averaging 19 PPR fantasy points per game in his 7 career games against the Giants. He has 70 or more yards in every game. Would you start Terry McLaurin or who did we just talk about? Jordan Addison.
McLaurin.
That's one of the guys that I might flip with Addison. Let's say McLaurin over Addison.
Jamie's getting a little tired over there. I think he needs a pick me up. I'm sorry, I forgot, Jamie. I hope I get it up too. Happy birthday to you. Hey! Happy birthday. Back to the game. Stat of the game that always matters and will haunt Giants pass catchers all season long. The Giants have 2 passing touchdowns in 6 games. That's wonderful stuff. All right, the Commanders are really the more interesting team here. Sam Howell, is top 10 for you guys. So you're starting him over any non-obvious guy. Would you start Howell over Goff or Love this week?
Yes.
I'd start Love over Howell, but Howell one spot ahead of Goff.
Okay, it's interesting. You know, the Giants have allowed only 8 touchdown passes in 6 games. They've done it 20 points to Tua, 17 points to Josh Allen. It's interesting. Getting better. Brian Robinson is top 15 for everybody. He's a good start. Antonio Gibson is not. And Terry McLaurin, yes. How about Curtis Samuel, start or sit?
He's a good number 3 receiver this week. I mean, you got to buy into what he's been doing. You know, he's got a touchdown in 3 straight games, 14 or more PPR points each of those games as well. They're using him as a rusher. He's, I said it earlier this week, he's, you know, doing what his namesake has done, you know, in this offense, you know, getting the ball out of the backfield. So look, there's a lot to like about the situation. There's just not a lot to trust about the situation, because at some point that 4 for 42 without the touchdown is what you might be looking at. And so I don't know if there's okay, I feel great starting Curtis Samuel situation out there, but 6 teams on a bye and all these injuries, you know, he's a pretty good flex.
Let me give you a weird stat here, because it's interesting to me that the Giants defense isn't really so great, but I tell you this all the time, right? They don't allow receptions to running backs. 20 or more games in a row now, running back doesn't have a touchdown catch or more than 34 yards. And they also don't allow deep balls. They've allowed 1 catch this year of 30 or more air yards. It was a Tyreek Hill touchdown. 4 catches of 20 or more air yards this year. So they must be getting killed in the middle of the field, the intermediate area. And they have allowed the 3rd most yards per catch on throws of 5 to 15 air yards. This is an area that the Giants struggle in. That's an area of the field that Curtis Samuel might be able to take advantage of. It might be a bit of a stretch statistically. I don't know. But hey, I don't know. Giving it a shot. Might be.
Sounds like a Logan Thomas area.
Hey, that could be too. How do you feel about him
and
coming off
Terry McLaurin area, to be perfectly honest?
How do you feel about him coming off that dud, Logan Thomas?
Not great. I think he's serviceable as a starting fantasy tight end, but Jonnu, I'd start over him. Luke Musgrave against Denver, I'd start him. I have Freiermuth over him right now. I think he's just a low-end starting tight end who might give you another dud.
He's going to be one of these guys all season long that when we give up on him, he performs well, and when we buy into him, he stinks. You know, he just feels like that's Logan Thomas.
On the Giants side of the ball, start Barkley.
Who's the all? I don't know how to figure out team. Like Kendrick Bourne feels like that's one of those guys. Logan Thomas feels like he's one of those guys.
Calvin Ridley was one of those guys, and I think he's starting, like Adam said, to slide the other way.
Yeah.
So a guy that you sit him when
you just don't know what to do, right?
Like every time we get excited about him, he disappoints us. Then when we say, "Okay, I'm done with him," he comes back and does something productive.
Hunter Henry to a low level.
Hunter Henry.
DJ Moore.
No.
Beginning of the year. No, I mean, I can tell you, I sat DJ Moore twice. I think, you know, more people sat him just once, and he had a good game.
When did anybody sit him?
After his first 2 games, I think, probably going into week 3.
Well, didn't he score in week 2?
Yeah, he was okay, I think.
Maybe
I'm not sure
after week 1. I don't know. Yeah, he had 100 yards in week 2, so I'm probably wrong about that.
Bang.
Your team stinks. Wow, look at all these players.
Darren Waller is like a top 8 tight end, and then Wan'Dale Robinson or Josh Downs. Who would you guys rather have?
Robinson.
I have
one guy's playing Washington, one guy's playing Cleveland. This isn't very difficult.
Yeah, I'm taking Downs. I think there'll be more volume for Downs than there will be for Robinson.
All right. Robinson or Rashee Rice?
Rice.
Should we do Rice, baby? What do you think? No? Okay, we won't do that. We can just do happy birthday again. And that is, Washington DST. You can start them. They are, I think, 7th for Jamie, 11th for Dave, and 6th for Dave. And that's it for fantasy football today. Appreciate your time, everybody. We will talk to you on the Mailbag Show, recording that at noon Eastern on Friday, publishing it if you want to see it. You know, you can watch it on YouTube if you want to see it before Saturday, publishing it on Saturday morning.
I have so many good dance stories.
Good. Yeah. This is going to be a great mailbag. We will talk to you
Thank
later.
you for all the happy birthday wishes. I appreciate it.
You know it, buddy. Happy birthday, Jamie. Happy weekend, everybody. See you later.